We talked on this show a ton. The Hawks are most likely going to trade one of Trae Young or Dejounte Murray. I don't want to guarantee you it 100% because I don't know what the Atlanta Hawks are thinking half the time when they make their moves. So, it's foolish. It's like when I said the Falcons wouldn't draft Michael Penix. Well, it's like, well, don't ever bet against what an organization that has a track record of making questionable decisions will do, because the Hawks very well have a track record of making probably the most questionable decisions of any NBA team, or at least they're up there. But will they trade both of them? Bill Simmons on his podcast recently said he's hearing murmurs around the league that they are more likely to trade both than keep them. Or was it more than keep them, or was it to actually just trade them both?
So the quote was, it was very jumbled. If you know who Bill Simmons is, he rarely is well. He doesn't articulate what he's thinking very well, and he basically was saying that if Vegas had the odds of trading both of them versus trading just Dejounte Murray versus just trading Trae Young versus trading neither of them, that's what he would take, and it should be favored. That wouldn't be the case if Vegas did that. With that being said, I mean, Bill Simmons has some sort of connections, and he is technically an NBA insider, though he is more of a mouthpiece, a puppet for agents and league sources and people like that than he is actually like the Wojnarowskis or even the Shams. And Shams is approaching the mouthpiece of NBA side. He really is. I mean, Windhorst should be considered above him in terms of trustworthy. With that being said, I don't think Bill Simmons is just pulling this out of his butt. Like, I do think that, that things are starting to get through the cracks in terms of knowledge of what's coming out of Atlanta. And they have to be considering every possible avenue, which includes trading both of them. Now, with that being said, opinion mode. I'm a Hawks fan. I want to win a championship, but more than anything, honestly, and it's kind of pathetic, it's kind of like a loser, weak mentality. I'd rather just not suck. I'd rather just not watch terrible basketball for 82 games a year than making the right move, which could be trading both of your all-star point guards, taking several step backs for several years before you can move forward. It might be the right move. In fact, it's the gutsy move that, these long-term NBA champions, like the Boston Celtics, that feels like a type of move they would make, where it's like, ooh, the Celtics are doing this. A couple years later, they're right back in it. And that feels like the type of move that winning basketball teams make. With that being said, the Hawks are ran by fans. They're ran by us. So generally speaking, I feel like they're going to do the things that the fans would want, which is generally the wrong thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to make 2 points. One was the fact that you have Nick Ressler and Tony Ressler being the guys that are going to hit the veto
Considerable
button.
Voices.
I mean, they're going to hit they are the final say. Like, whatever, everything has to be ran through them. And if they tell you otherwise, they're straight up lying to you, which they've lied to us a million times over the last several years. So it has to go through them. They can hit the veto on anything. They've shown, I think it was Travis Schlenk, kind of brought up the idea of potentially trading Trae Young a few years ago, and that
after the Eastern Conference,
and that really pissed off Nick Ressler. And obviously they have Trae fanboys up there in the Wrestlers. So the odds, and plus think about their pockets. Going to a rebuild. This is a team that deeply cares about their pockets. They know that their golden child, their golden goose, is Trae Young. So it's hard to believe that they would willingly go into a rebuild, even if it's what's best for the organization. But let's talk about if it is best for the organization, because you don't own your first round picks, like the future first round picks. So tanking doesn't do you very much good. And I've tried to say, like, I would be the first person to blow this thing up if we had our first round picks. Hell, I would be like, please blow this thing up. We got the number 1 pick this year, blow it up. You have a great draft class in 2025 that you could really get a really all-star player to pair with your number 1 overall pick and Jalen Johnson. I would be screaming from the rooftops, blow this thing up, trade everybody, get several picks for Dejounte, several picks for Trae, have your own picks. But because you don't have your own picks, tanking doesn't do you anything. It actually it does absolutely nothing. So it
just makes the Spurs better.
I just have a hard time believing that they're going to tank when they don't own their picks. It would make all the sense in the world, but everyone that kind of says these things, and I don't know if Bill Simmons is really hearing this thing or he's just kind of mumble jumbling things in his head, and he doesn't realize that the Hawks don't own their own pick, because that's kind of what people who don't realize the Hawks don't own their picks would say, because that does make the most sense if they own their own pick. They don't own their own picks. tanking does nothing except make the Spurs better. Now, if you can get that pick
Yeah, I was
back,
just about to say there's a big if, and there is an avenue to get those picks
get
back.
that pick back, and we're in a different conversation.
And it's going to take a lot of standing up there and raising your hand by the Atlanta Hawks and saying, we're idiots. We're going to try and get this right this time by trading Dejounte Murray or Trae Young. What's crazy is, like, let's just paint the scenario where they do trade both and you're trying to accumulate as many draft picks as humanly possible. You're going to trade Dejounte Murray back for half the price that you paid to get him. And then you're going to, for San Antonio purposes. And then if you try and trade Trae Young to the Spurs, you might get back all of those picks because they're going to hold your feet to the fire because they know you're in a position where if you are trying to tank, you need those draft picks more than the Spurs do, much more than the Spurs do, if that's the direction they go. Now, with that being said, Hawks fans don't want to trade them. I don't want to trade them. I don't want to watch bad basketball for the next, 6 months out of the year. It's just terrible to do. And quite, to be honest, this past year was horrible to watch.
You don't have to watch.
In of itself.
It's okay. You don't have to watch. I mean, literally, trust me. You really don't have to watch it. If they're terrible, you don't think I'm going to watch a 20-win Hawks team? No, I'm not going to watch that crap. And we're not going to talk about it all season, just like we did this past season. We'll talk about it in the offseason when the stuff absolutely matters. One thing I do want to say, and I do question, because I think a lot of people are just assuming they wouldn't be able to get both of their picks back from the Spurs. And I look at this from a scenario where I think Dejounte is on a more team-friendly. I think he showed he's still a very good player while he's in Atlanta, even though it didn't work. And he's on a, $25 million to $30 million deal over the next 4 seasons? Yeah, so under $30 million, in between 25 and 30 over the next 4 seasons is what he's under. Like, to me, he's almost a hotter commodity than when the Spurs traded for him. So I like, maybe they would be like, no, you have to accept less just to be like, yeah, like we're holding. We know
you can have your first.
You're in a terrible
position. You can have your first round picks back, but we're keeping the swap. That way, it kind of looks like
whatever it is. I agree. Like they know you're desperate. And They know you need your picks back. But I'm just saying, I do think Dejounte Murray is, at the very least, the same in terms of value across the league because his contract is so favorable.
Well, I think, value is circumstantial because Travis Schlenk was hesitant to make that Dejounte Murray deal because he thought it was too much to pay. And it seems like the rest of the league also thought that because they didn't give the Spurs what they want and the Atlanta Hawks did. And then Schlenk was out of there within the calendar year after trading for Dejounte Murray. So maybe that value wasn't even accurate. Never know.
No, I mean, I agree. But yeah, Hawks suck. Braves offense sucks. Hawks suck. It's all about Atlanta team sucking, guys. Hopefully they don't trade away both of them because you're right. It would be a terrible product to watch.